Hello and welcome to the Delta EE webinar on digital energy insights, apps and tools, and how well they are meeting residential customer needs. I'm David Trevithick, one of your hosts today. I've been at Delta EE for about 3 years now, and prior to that at an energy retailer. And I'm joined also by my colleague Suzanne Zhang, also from previously having energy retailer experience.
Yes, thank you, David. Hello, everyone. I'm Zhou from the Energy Insight team in Delta EE. I'm working with David. And for a short introduction, I used to work for Energy Research Institute. I also have experience with retailers. I worked for Total in France, and now I'm joining Delta EE, focusing on the digital services. And so welcome everybody again to join our webinars today.
Great, thank you. It's great to be here, and for the next about 45 minutes, we'll be taking you through this webinar on how well energy insight tools are actually meeting customer needs. The webinar is being recorded and will be available to you, as well as the slide deck as well, just to be aware of that. Right, what we're going to talk to today in terms of the agenda is the energy insights market. We'll be looking at the size of the market and its opportunity, predominantly for retailers. That's the skew for today, but it's still relevant for others as well. And customer behaviours and attitudes. We'll be seeing some results from our customer research in Europe and helping understand that, and then looking ahead to see where the market is moving going forwards. You're all able to ask questions as we go through that, and that will pop up, and we'll try and answer some of them as we go through where it fits in with the narrative. If we don't get to answer those, we'll have a bit of time at the end to answer a few, or if not, then we'll get back to you after the webinar. So do feel free to post your questions and comments as we go through. But first, a little bit about Delta EE, as I know there'll be some people on the line who won't know us. I know many do. But Delta EE is a research and consulting company enabling our clients to capture market opportunities from the energy transition. Within the multinational team, we've got myself in Edinburgh, for instance, and Suzanne in the Paris office today. Between us, we have deep expertise across the new energy categories, and we use this to support all types of organisations with an interest in this space. Those include energy suppliers, product manufacturers, network operators, policymakers, and investors. Our core clients are generally in Europe and Japan, but we research more broadly than that. And today, we're within the digital energy space, and specifically Energy Insights, which is a new service Delta EE is launching. When we talk about energy insights, we're referring to the energy consumption data generated from smart meters or other hardware like clamps and sensors, from software and from artificial intelligence, and how it is packaged and displayed for residential energy customers to access and benefit from. Bringing customers along on the energy transition is a critical part of most new energy solutions. And much of the changing customer needs and expectations, technology advances from smart meters, the smart home, and new energy technology, and energy companies' commercial pressures from competition, digitalization, and cost to serve are driving the role of energy consumption insights in this energy transition. So that's a little introduction to Energy Insights. I will now hand over to Suzanne to talk about the market size of this market.
Yes, thanks, David, for the introduction of why Energy Insight is becoming more and more important as part of the customer service. So what is going on in the market today? As a first step, we are using the Energy Insight smartphone apps as an indicator to show the progress of the energy services at the country level. So if we look at the European map on the right, we can see the figures, which indicates the monthly Energy Insight active users via the smartphone applications. The different colors shows the different percentage of the energy customers using their Energy Insight services via smartphones. basically, we estimate around 20 million Europeans using energy insight services in the last month via their smartphone applications. This figure is closer to 50 million if we combine the access via other digital channels, for example, the web portals and the energy monitors, for example. Of the 17 European countries that we studied, we have around 50% of the people have downloaded the Energy Insight smartphone applications, and around 10% of the homes are actively using the Energy Insight via their applications. We observe that there is a definite growth of the using of Energy Insight services year by year, and we believe that through the key energy suppliers, this is becoming mainstream. And actually, for the remaining smaller suppliers, half of them are also starting their Energy Insight services via smartphones. The leading countries include France, Italy, UK, Netherlands, and Spain. They have larger customer base, and suppliers are actively offering these services. This could be because of a relatively good smart meter penetration, or they're progressing, like in Italy, Spain, Netherlands, and in UK, there is a large market competitiveness by launching the Energy Insight services. There are also countries with very low penetrations, for example, Greece, Germany, Austria, and we think this is also relative to the lower penetration of the smart meters rollout. So basically, this is the market size at the level of European countries. And we also have studied the market size and the use of smartphone applications at the company level, which is in the next page. Yes, thanks, David. So here is the usage to the key energy retailers of their Energy Insight applications. We can see from the chart on the right, which shows the Energy Insight app usage rate by different applications from the retailers. On the x-axis, it is the ratio of the energy customers using the Energy Insight applications. And for the y-axis, we have the number of residential energy customers. So basically, the big players or the incumbents, for example, large players in France, in Italy, in Spain, they're using Energy Insight as a digital tool to engage their customers, to increase customer loyalty, and also to simplify their customer services. So we can see that Energy Insight is playing different roles for different market players. Recently, we haven't found any companies at the upper right corner, which means that big players are still promoting the Energy Insight services, but it's still becoming mainstream, as we found that over 80% of the leading suppliers have already rolled out the Energy Insight services. And for the rest of the other companies, also over half of the suppliers have already had their Energy Insight services. On the other hand, the challenge brand in UK, Netherlands, France, for example, they're taking advantage of Energy Insight to reduce the cost to serve their customers. This could help to attract the new customers by offering this different customer experience with the digital process from the very beginning of their contract. So we have basically these around 40 retailers as shown in the chart. But for our researchers, we have around over 100 retailers in our list. So we can really see that the Energy Insight services, at least through the smartphone applications, is becoming more and more important and mainstream in the European market. I think in the next page, David will tell more about the source of values of the Energy Insight services.
Yes, thank you, Suzanne. Just before I move on to that, I had a couple of questions sort of come in. I'll just try and address. One is, why do customers use energy apps, and is it different across Europe? We'll be looking at why customers use energy insights in the next section, actually, when we talk about the customer research findings, and also a question around whether the figures include customers using apps to pay energy bills and the like. Sometimes when energy insights are combined with other functionality, such as account management, they're included in the figures where we have it. Sometimes they're separate, and they're separate apps, then they'll be registered accordingly. So I hope that comes some way to explaining that. Do keep the questions coming through, though. Right, so we're now going to move on to, so we've looked at the size of the market. We're now going to talk through a little bit about the value of it. And here we've got an axis with value on the vertical and time elapsing on the horizontal axis. Reduction in the cost to serve customers is the most immediate source of value to energy retailers. Some suppliers receive millions of calls per year, and most of these are around the energy bills. There's greater understanding through energy insights, and that will reduce call volumes. And for those people that do want to interact, they'll divert that interaction through the less expensive digital channels. So in terms of the actual size of that value, obviously varied a lot depending on whether it's an incumbent brand, a digital brand already, the size of their customer base. But the costs to serve savings here can add up into huge numbers, really. We're looking at millions of euros at that sort of scale for some of the larger retailers. Retention is sort of the next sort of bucket of value, and this will happen after a certain period of time or a tariff expiry. So the benefit won't be quite so immediate, which is why it's further on the right-hand side. For digital energy companies, when inbound call volumes are low, the value of the retention might be higher. For incumbent brands, that value might not be quite as strong as the cost to serve benefit. But of course, these are cumulative sources of value and recurring, not just the cost to serve plus the retention, but actually recurring in years 2 and years 3, for instance. Energy insight users, by their very nature, are more likely to churn. However, we can infer from the customer research that we've done across Europe that retention rates can increase from around the 85% mark to around the sort of 90% mark amongst digital energy insights users across Europe. So working out what that would amount to, for instance, again, you've got a similar level of value coming out of this in retention as cost to serve in terms of the millions of euros for the larger energy retailers. And engagement, it comes on as it's ongoing over time, so it appears across the time band. Energy insights ensures energy retailers have positive interactions with customers rather than the negativity associated with an energy bill, for instance. It also helps develop frequent positive interactions. This can be seen in stronger customer satisfaction and advocacy scores, and we've seen that evidence in the industry and across our research, our customer research as well. However, in itself, customer engagement doesn't generate value, but it strengthens the customer relationship and deepens that to allow value to come through things like retention and also for added value services. And these added value services can take many forms, such as maximizing self-generation of a customer solar PV and storage system, or helping to optimize grid management through home energy management within perhaps certain budget or comfort levels constraints. And this value might come direct from the customer, perhaps in the form of a more profitable tariff, a specific subscription, for example, or from benefiting from cheaper wholesale prices through changed consumer behaviour. But the actual value is difficult to quantify and also won't be necessarily realised for several years. This has the potential to be much higher in terms of value than the cost to serve and the retention benefits that we've previously talked about. I'm just going quick through the questions. We've got one around, can you provide some detail on the increase in churn for Insights users? Yes, the fact that Energy Insights users are by their very nature more engaged, they're therefore more likely to switch suppliers, and we found that regardless of platform they use, but particularly so with digital platforms like the smartphone app. So these people are naturally engaged in the market and therefore naturally more likely to churn. However, the retention benefit is still seen because those people were more likely to churn in greater numbers if there wasn't the Energy Insights solution than the fact that there was. So that is why there is that retention benefit, as I say, from around 85 to 90%. So I hope that sort of clarifies that point. I'm going to ask a poll of you guys. There's quite a large number of you out there, so I think it'd be good to get your views on this and be interactive. So I'm going to ask a question around the value of Energy Insights. We've just talked through some of those buckets, but it'd be interesting to see what you think are the most important sources of value for Energy Insights. So I'm going to launch a poll that you should see up on your screen in a moment. Right, the poll is open, so I'll read out the question and give you a chance to answer. What do you think is the most important source of value of Energy Insights for energy retailers? So it's a single response, so you can only answer one. Is it reducing the cost to serve customers, increasing customer retention, better engaging customers, the new sort of future energy services, or other within that? So results are coming through. They're quite interesting. I'm forcing you to make a choice. It's not to say obviously that they aren't all important, but it's interesting. I'll just give it another minute. There's still more ones coming through. Over 70% of us have voted now. I'll just keep it open just for a couple of seconds longer, and then see what the results look like. Right, okay, we've got 80% of people have voted already. Right, I think I'll close the survey off now. Give you a moment to think about that. So I'll share the results with you. So I hope you can see that on screen yourselves. Interesting, the reducing cost to serve isn't seen as that critical, nor is the customer retention. So it's actually around the better engagement of customers and the new future energy services. It's interesting. I mean, to us, engaging customers is not a value in itself, but the fact that it is a stepping stone to other sources of value is definitely very important. And the new future energy services, yeah, a lot of people do think that holds the greatest value, but it's going to take some time to unlock. So, you know, maybe the reflection of more people perhaps from an innovation than an operational remit with us on the webinar today, potentially. But they're really interesting findings. Okay, so let's move on. So that shows us really a little bit about the size of the market and the opportunity there. I mentioned the customer research that we've done. We did speak to 1,000 energy decision makers, of household decision makers, that is, in Europe across 5 key countries. And I'm going to share some of the results from that data set with you. The first one is around the main reason to use Energy Insights service, which is one of the questions that came up earlier. And these, to me, are really interesting. The slides are going to come in sort of reverse order to keep the suspense going. And to us, one of the most interesting findings was that the reduction of the carbon footprint is not necessarily the strongest motivator to use Energy Insight apps. So 5% are saying the energy carbon footprint, 12% keeping the home running efficiently. So it's really sort of talking about the sort of smart connected home there. So this is really interesting findings, these two, as we consider them to be perhaps secondary reasons for using energy insight apps rather than primary motivators, which are around reducing the energy bill and about actually understanding the energy usage and spend there. That doesn't mean, of course, that reducing carbon footprint isn't important, but it becomes second to other more motivating factors. I think this has strong implications for product functionality and marketing communications. Whilst there are sort of small differences between subgroups, looking at the sort of percentage of those who selected carbon footprint reduction, even amongst the most sort of ethically motivated attitudinal segment, the pattern was still the same right across these sort of 50 subgroups that we looked at. So really interesting finding to us on this. The most revealing finding, looking at that carbon footprint in a little bit more detail, was actually the difference between customers of large energy suppliers and smaller energy suppliers. So those customers of the smaller energy suppliers, they're more likely to mention or choose reducing carbon footprint as a primary motivator. So we feel that's because they feel that they've already made those cost savings by switching suppliers, and therefore they're looking at other things. But even so, even with them, it's still a secondary motivation for using energy insight solutions. Oh, I'm getting a message actually that we're freezing on the poll. Sorry, I've only just seen these questions come in. I hope you can now see the screen. So you missed the suspense there, coming in reverse order, but basically, hopefully you can see that on screen now. Reducing carbon footprint and keeping the home running efficiently is not as strong a motivator as understanding energy usage and spend and reducing that bill. Good, I'm getting a confirmation that you can see that, so thank you for that. So moving on then, so we know why people are using energy insights. How about how, in terms of the energy platforms? We looked at research across key Western European countries, and over half actually access energy insights in the last month when you take into account all the different channels, including things like the basic information supplied on an energy bill. But when we narrow it down to the digital platforms, we see that the smartphone app is the most used device in most countries, and in the Netherlands by quite some margin. So a lot of the major suppliers offer energy insight services through an app. So this slide shows the top 3 platforms for selected countries. So energy monitors and smart speakers, for instance, are less used at the moment than the ones we see here in terms of the smartphone app, the web portal, or email and text alerts. What's interesting when we look at the differences by country, the biggest difference is with the UK. It seems like the British like to go their own way. So perhaps it's not a surprise that the most striking difference is when we look at the UK in terms of the energy monitor, which actually then sort of replaces the smartphone app as the leading device. The in-home display are offered to households in the UK at the point of smart meter installation. So that is why that is the case. Everything else actually gets relegated down that list. And there are different channels obviously lend themselves to different use cases. You can argue that the energy monitor might be strong for real-time energy monitoring, the smartphone perhaps for remote control, and web portals for perhaps more extensive study and analysis. But interestingly, our customer research suggests that there is limited overlap between the digital platforms. So really this helps build the rationale for omni-channel solutions, so customers can get the full range of functionality, whichever platform they choose to use. And we are now seeing this with energy monitor manufacturers like Geo, for instance, enhancing their offer, or Energy Insights linking to account management in both sort of smartphone app and customer web portals like EDF, for instance. So we're seeing a lot of this going on in the market. Right, we're moving on to then the overall customer appeal. We're getting quite a few questions in, which we might try and pick up at the end, but I don't want to keep to time. I'm going to move on a little bit. So we know why energy customers use Energy Insights. We know the platforms they use. What are these specific compelling use cases? So we looked at a batch of functionality from disaggregation to gamification, and we selected the most compelling ones to show and share with you here. You can see that while there's always more that can be improved, there's generally good levels of appeal amongst digital Energy Insights users when compared to the average across 50 new energy customer propositions we've now tested. And these 4 use cases cover examples of understanding energy use as well as reducing bills. It covers content that primarily draws customers in, as well as the push notifications to customers. And it also shows past consumption being covered here, analysis of past consumption, as well as empowering customers in the present. So an interesting differences in the use cases they're being covered off. But what is interesting too is that there's no one sort of hero application. So we would argue that a portfolio of different functionality is needed for a full service solution. So the key challenges really for the industry here are around converting and building existing appeal into product trial to engage a bigger and broader customer base, and to keep that level of appeal going once the energy consumption is better understood and the bills have stabilized, which we talked about once we've addressed those primary motivators. So that second question around keeping appeal stronger will reflect on a little bit in the market evolution section coming up. But in terms of how to sort of convert and build existing appeal into product trial, it's a big topic, but improvements can generally be made when there's greater access. So either omni-channel presence, for instance, or bringing Energy Insights into other established customer touch points, like account management functionality. That helps to breed the familiarity. Another area is around stronger data visualization. Most people aren't overly familiar with time series graphs or other data-heavy charts. Even this chart, is not the easiest to explain and understand for an average person. It's only got a handful of data points, but it could still be simplified by using perhaps happy, sad face emojis, for instance, and that'll help the ease and speed of understanding and processing for consumers. And we also know that product demonstration helps convert appeal into trial, as a physical or a visual demonstration, perhaps on a website, helps to break down barriers and taps into the emotional benefits of perhaps not wanting to miss out. So a strong and hassle-free call to action will help improve conversion there as well. I'm just having a quick look at some of the questions. We've got quite a few of them actually coming in. So rather than dwell on them all now, I will try and choose some for the end, and we'll try and answer some at the end. Thank you for them, and we'll keep them coming through. If we don't get to answer all the questions, we'll try and come back to you directly after following the webinar as well. Okay, so that kind of covers off a little bit about what the customers want from this, the actual needs, and how well that's being covered off, perhaps. I think now the next section is looking at the market evolution, and then we can come back to some of the bigger questions. So I'll hand back over to Suzanne to talk through. Oh no, before we do that, actually, apologies, we do have a second poll actually, looking at the future focus to meet customer needs. So I'll launch the next poll on this, So hopefully you'll be able to see that coming up on your screen shortly. So the question here is, how should energy companies use energy insights to meet residential customer needs? And here's a multi-response. So you can choose more than one answer here. So is it around providing the access and functionality to attract customers in, so it's drawing the customers in, or is it actually pushing relevant notifications out to the customers? Or thirdly, is it about bypassing the customers completely and using automation, for instance, to help meet their needs? Potentially particularly useful for more the passive consumers that aren't so interested in energy insights. Or is there another way? Frankly, I don't know. So I'll leave that open. But half of the people have voted already. I'll keep it open just for another 30 seconds. Give you another chance. So how should energy companies use energy insights to meet residential customer needs? Is it about drawing customers in, pushing notifications out to customers, bypassing customers completely, or other? Well, we've got most people voted now. I'll give it another few seconds. So hurry up with your vote if you're about to do it. And I'll close the poll off. Great, okay, I think we're there. So I'll close the poll off and share the results with you that I hope you'll be able to see on the screen now. Interesting that actually it's a mixed bag in terms of people think both the audience pull and the push out to that audience are both important, and both score over 50%. So really both solutions are particularly important. There is still nearly a third of the audience thinking actually bypassing the customers completely it also has a role to play. So it feels that to meet customer needs in the future, then a multi-tact approach is needed. Great, right, I shall now try and hide this and get back to the main screen that I hope you can now see. And we'll now move on to the market evolution. So I shall pass back to Zishan to take us through this.
Yes, thank you, David, for presenting all of those interesting findings from the customer perceptions. And for the market evolution, we have found that for the energy customer services, a lot of traditional customers services are transitioned from the process-driven to the customer-focused. Here, for the engagement framework, we have defined 4 different catalog of the framework. The first one is the execute, which is only focusing on the operational integrity. And then some companies start a conversation with the customers, which means to engage customers with the first conversation. And we still have quite a lot of energy suppliers at this level of customer services. But more and more energy suppliers are moving to empower, which is to help customers take actions and do it their way. And finally, a small number of the suppliers are starting to collaborate with the customers, which means to work with customers and make them as a business partner. This is for the general customer engagement framework. And when it comes to the energy insight services, what would it look like? So let's move to the next slide. Yes, great. So as for the energy insight market framework, suppliers are moving towards collaboration with customers. So today, you could see from the table on the right, the energy retailers, they are separated in these 3 different frameworks. The first one is the engagement, as like we defined just now. For energy insight, the engage is about the past. It's like to tell you your basic information of energy bills, your historical energy consumption data, and then more and more suppliers are moving to empower customers, which is about what is happening now. So at the moment, what you can do with those data. For example, we can see CSMVE here. I believe they are estimating the energy consumption usage each month for the customers and show it in different level of colors, and that could remind the energy consumers to be aware of their energy usage, which it will surpass the normal consumption or it's lower than the normal ones, and you could compare with your neighbors. So which means you can take actions right now to reduce your energy bills. We have also EDF, British Gas, which is they are sending energy efficiency tips to all the customers and to help them to take actions to reduce their energy consumption and also the energy cost. Finally, we can find some of the companies that are collaborating with the customers. So the collaboration is about the future. It means that to work with the energy customers to help with the grid services, to feedback to the balance of our grid system. For example, let's take a look at an example of EDP. EDP has an energy insight package called Ready. They have a mobile application and also with a series of hardware monitors. They help the owner of the solar PV panels or the battery storage to change their load pattern in order to better fit their own generation. And what's more, EDP installs a smart meter for all the Ready customers. And we found out that 99% of the customers who have the Ready package, they have a bundle offer with the solar PV or the battery installation, and while paying just a small monthly subscription fee for its use. So this is how they collaborate with their energy insight customers to provide much more services for our society or for the public systems. So this is why we believe that the whole market, with the improvement of the data process and the rise of the new energy models, we believe the market is moving towards the customer collaboration. But look back today, we couldn't say there is a best model for the whole market of Europe, because the engagement, it also meets a lot of customers' need in several countries. So we could look forward to the future that more and more of the energy insight services could move from the engagement to empower and to the collaboration. Yes, thanks, David.
Great, thank you, Suzanne. So we're going to talk now, hand it back over to the questions from your delegates here on the webinar. There's quite a few just coming through. I'll give you just another minute to put them through, and we'll go back to some of the ones that came through earlier as well. We have a few minutes to do that, but while those ones are just coming through and we're selecting the ones we've got time to answer, I just want to quickly mention the Energy Insights Plus service that we have recently launched at Delta EE. We have detailed research reports on key market trends in this area. We have profiles now of 50 solutions of leading energy insight services, and this includes solutions from both vendors in the market, but also energy retailers, with a combined residential customer base now over 100 million residential consumers. And we're starting to develop an interactive energy insights sort of database, really capturing sort of key metrics from a country, supplier and customer app level amongst European energy retailers. So just to let you know that exists. If you want to find out more, I'm very happy to discuss that with you later. So let's get back to some of the questions that have come in, and I'll try and pick up one or two from earlier. We've had a question around what are the emotional or rational benefits of energy insights. We did actually ask a question within that customer research in terms of how they would describe their energy insights that they use, and from that we got a mixture of both emotional and rational reasons for that. In terms of the emotional reasons, they come up quite strongly around newness, innovation, being modern. So I think if those sort of brand perceptions were then associated, if those energy insights perceptions were then associated with your brand, then that's quite a positive emotional benefit you're getting from energy insights apps. Obviously, the rational benefits you can probably imagine more. What they are, sort of useful was kind of the most strongly associated word I think that came out of that. But yeah, sort of useful, valuable, interesting, empowering. Those are the sorts of things that came out of that. So that was one question that came up. There's a few questions about individual companies on the screen in terms of what about X? Why haven't you mentioned us? That was a selection of energy retailers. I think we've had a long list of about 100, I think, from which we sort of narrowed down to show some of the sort of where some of the energy companies actually are placed in there. Right, so there's a couple of questions answered. I'm just going through this list. Is there anything else that we can quickly answer before we finish off? There is something actually around that carbon footprint again. I think it's perhaps when we lost the page a little bit, that wasn't perhaps fully explained. So if I just quickly clarify on that, the reducing carbon footprint we believe is still very important, but it was a secondary motivator rather than a primary motivator. It's because we forced people into a decision as to what their primary motivation is. So people can only choose one. So it's a multiple choice question. I'm sure that would come up much more strongly. It's also worth reflecting that the customer research paints a picture of current attitudes and behaviour, and we believe this is changing. So in the UK, a recent Ipsos Mori tracker is a long-running tracker around issues in the UK, and that showed that climate change is now at its highest level for 3 decades, for instance. So it is important and is increasingly so. So really to show leadership and to chime with those changing attitudes, that shows a positive step. So I'd suggest sort of perhaps reframing the marketing and even the product design to first answer the primary consumer motivations of bill and energy usage transparency and bill reduction, and then think about the carbon footprint and the smooth running home, which is more linked around the how we see it as the smart home and connected home side of things as a secondary motivator. And then if you paint it in that form, then if something helps you and also helps the environment or society as a whole, then what's not to like? So I think there are more questions. We'll try and get back to those people we haven't spoken to directly by email or phone after the webinar over the next sort of day or two. If you've got any questions, do still feed them through. We'll try and respond to you directly, and do get in contact if you want to know about the Energy Insights Plus service that we've now launched. We've got some useful information there and on the customer research too. So I think for me, it's about sort of perhaps wrapping up now and saying, thank you very much for your time. Be aware we do have the Talking New Energy podcast is now in its 5th series, and that's back. And the last 2 episodes, I think, will have relevance to people on the webinar today. So thank you, and please get in contact if you'd like to know more about our new Energy Insights Plus service or other services from Delta EE. Otherwise, I'll say thank you and Have a good rest of the day.
Thank you.